today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome into the June 28th edition of Morning Hockey Shot. I am Andrew McDougall, and we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Second week in a row that I've had Instagram up and running, which is absolutely awesome. We're getting set for a big weekend in the Australian Ice Hockey League, week 11. So really starting to get towards the finals now, and the standings is interesting. People are jostling for positions in the middle. We're starting to bunch up in the middle. We've got a team at the top that is breaking away from everyone else at the top of the standings. But you can find my work at andrewkmacdougall.com.au. I've released a few articles this week, so please check them out. Today, I'll have Eric Balnar on, the commentator for the Adelaide Adrenaline. A lot of people will know Eric and Eric's work throughout hockey and also baseball. Eric is heavily involved in baseball. So when Eric comes on, I'll touch on a bit of baseball as well and the correlations between the Australian Ice Hockey League and baseball here in Australia, or ice hockey and baseball here in Australia. I have a Melbourne Aces hat on today. I thought with Eric coming on, why not chuck the hat on like I did last week with Chris Langille. I had a Perth Inferno beanie on. So I'm looking forward to having Eric come on the show today. Also today, it is NHL Draft Day. So happy NHL Draft Day to all those that celebrate the NHL Draft. Hopefully your teams can select players for the future that will impact your club. I'm a Calgary Flames fan, so I sort of don't I don't have a lot of faith. But last season, or last year in the NHL draft, the Flames actually drafted quite well. They had a really strong draft. So I'm hoping that they continue that on this season in a short, it's 9 a.m. now, just after 9 a.m. I think the draft will be starting shortly. So the selections might be already done. But week 11 in the Australian Ice Hockey League is this weekend, and it is a packed schedule. All teams are playing, which is awesome. I think it's really cool when we have all teams in action across a weekend. So I'll jump straight into the menu. What we've got on the menu today for today's show. At the top, as you can see, Eric Balnar will be joining me shortly. At around 9:10, I'll have Eric on the show. We can talk all things Adrenaline in their season. They're sort of starting to gear up for the season, the Adelaide Adrenaline. They're inching closer to a top 6 position, and they have a big couple of games across this weekend as well. The big dogs fire. So that is the Melbourne Ice. Last weekend, they were put to the test when they travelled up to Brisbane to face the Lightning, but they got the job done, and their big dogs were firing on all cylinders. So I'll have a chat about that. North Stars building. I did release an article yesterday about the Newcastle North Stars. They are quietly building a strong season, so we can touch on that as well. We'll have a look at the standings as usual and the schedule. I'll give you my pick of the week as well, as I always do. The games that I think, or the game that I think to look out for across the Australian Ice Hockey League. And we'll talk about the full schedule as well. As I just sort of mentioned, all teams are playing across the weekend. So we'll get stuck into all of that throughout the show today, and Eric will be on shortly as well. So hopefully you can ask Eric some questions in the comments and get some insights from the Adrenaline and commentating and all that sort of stuff when Eric jumps on the show today. I do have a comment in the chat from Brett Parker. D-Man Doo's going third round for sure. I don't think so. Actually, I did start playing, as I've started playing hockey this season for the first time, first time ever, after being a fan and covering the sport and all that sort of stuff. I've got roped into playing, which is really cool. But I did play center last week, so I've moved up from D. I'm playing center now, which is awesome. But thanks for the comment, Brett. When I did talk about starting this show at 9 a.m. every Saturday, Brett said he wouldn't be awake. So I'm happy to see Brett in the chat and awake. this morning. Just on the North Stars, before Eric jumps in and get Eric up on the screen, I just wanted to talk about the North Stars, because the North Stars are a team that a successful team. They've got an awesome rink at Hunter Ice Skating Stadium. I've been there, and I went there last year. It's one of those rinks where I think when you walk in, you get a sense straight away that you're in a hockey facility. It's one of those rinks, and it might not be like obviously we've seen with AIS Arena this year, a full bowl of 3,000 people, all that sort of stuff. As we see, Brett's jumped back in the chat as well. Man's at work. Hopefully it goes quickly for you so you can get out and watch your Mustangs this afternoon against the Adrenaline, Brett. But the AIS Arena, it's the Hunter Ice Skating Stadium isn't like AIS Arena, but when you walk in there, I love the fact that you get that vibe straight away that you are in an ice hockey rink. It's got full glass. It's got seating pretty much right around. It's behind the goals at one end. It's not quite seating. There is a new pavilion or a balcony, up above one of the goals, sort of in one of the corners. But when you walk in there, you really get a sense of this is a ice hockey rink, which is really, really cool. And this season, I just feel like the North Stars, although they're quite successful every single season in the Australian Ice Hockey League, and they get the job done and they make finals, they've won good All Cups. They're able to attract talent. They're able to keep talent at the North Stars as well. As we've seen this season, they've got Casey Kabara shifting over from the Canberra Brave and playing for the North Stars this season. They're able to attract really, really strong talent from overseas as well. And the North Stars now, they're slowly starting to build, and they've actually broken away. And my article that I released yesterday, North Stars Building Strong, AIHL season. If you jump over to andrewkmacdougall.com.au, you can check out that article. It's just highlighting the trend of the North Stars from the start of the season. And obviously, like, they didn't have all their imports weren't in the country yet. They had players like other teams as well that were off with world championships for the Australian national team or New Zealand, etc. Other teams had. But once they got their team back on the ice and their bodies back in the lineup, they've started to really, really build into a strong season. And they're getting production from the imports as well that have come into the team. They're not reliant on anyone. Francis Drolet is the only player that's in the top 10 for points this season for the North Stars. So they're really getting a spread across the workload in terms of points and goals. They're sitting in 5th position. They've opened up a 5-point gap on the Canberra Brave, who are in 6th. But they're really starting to build into their campaign. And now they've got the imports that are firing as well. So you've got Evgeny Sachkov, who's arrived and looks really, really good. You've got Kim Talberg as well, both playing on a left wing. They look really good for production. You got Kubat as well, a veteran Czech defender who stepped right in and has looked really good. They've also picked up players from the Sydney Bears, and we spoke about this a couple of times on the show about how the Sydney Bears and the Ice Dogs obviously aren't playing this season, but the North Stars are able to pick up Ryan Funes and Ryan Annesley, and Funes and Ethan Hauser have been paired up as well, which is really, really strong. So the North Stars are really building a really strong season in the AI this season. I really, really wanted to highlight the North Stars, and I released that article last night because I feel like it's not really been talked about much with the North Stars. And I know that media coverage, I suppose, for the Australian Ice Hockey League in general is not something that is readily available through mainstream media. I know the Newcastle News do a great job of covering the North Stars and have for years up in Newcastle. So I just wanted to highlight that with the North Stars and their season so far. I think it's really, really positive. And when you look at the standings and how they've opened up that 5-point gap on the Brave, they're really, really close now to the top from 2nd down to 4th. So you got the Lightning, the Thunder, and the Mustangs. So the North Stars are really, really inching closer to that top four, that top four area, that second or third spot. And they're really going to give it a shake, I think, as the season progresses as well. So that's the North Stars. I think they're looking really, really positive, and they've actually their goals against has really trended downward since the start of the season, where they were shipping goals like nobody's business. But they've really tightened that up now on the defensive end, and obviously that is getting the bodies back, etc., into the lineup. It's looking really good for the North Stars. They're looking really strong, and they're looking really competitive and getting things in order on the back end. And they're starting to find production now from the imports arriving, etc. So I just wanted to highlight the North Stars released that article yesterday. Just a few thoughts that I can put onto the screen and get people talking. And I think more media coverage out there is a good thing. We do have Eric sitting in the background. Our guest today, Adelaide Adrenaline commentator, voice of Australian hockey, I like to say. And I don't know if Eric would like that tag, but I believe so. We'll bring Eric into the show now. Eric Balnar, welcome to Morning Hockey Shot.
What is going on? Hopefully you can hear me okay. What's happening?
No, you sound good, mate. No, perfect. No, just talking about the North Stars. I'd sort of like to highlight a few teams each week and release an article and just some thoughts that I have. And I don't know what you've seen of the North Stars this season, but from the start of the season, obviously the World Championships and the imports hadn't arrived. But I feel like the North Stars are really building into their season now.
Yeah, well, when they were in Adelaide, when I saw them, they, it was Evgeny Skachkov. It was his second game. They had just played that Sunday game before. They were missing Wahib. They were missing a couple of the key locals. So I think building into it is probably a good call. I don't know. It's like, I feel like they kind of feel like Canberra last year in a way, right? Like, I mean, maybe not as dramatic as losing all those games at the start of the season, but in the terms of, yeah, you know what? As long as we stay afloat and mathematically alive, as long as we can make a run late and build into it, they'll be okay. But yeah, I mean, they've got some obviously key locals, and then the superstars they brought over are obviously have pretty big pedigree. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they it'll come down to the goaltending, right? Can they get the goaltending to get it done? Like, I think the team last time I checked had like a 840 save percentage or something like that. So it's all well and good to have all that, but if their goaltending isn't there, it's not there. So hopefully they'll be okay.
Yeah, that seems like the trend across hockey worldwide, isn't it? It's I remember I listened to a lot of Jeff Merrick, and I remember Jeff Merrick saying something along the lines of if you win, it's 20% or 30% of your goaltending or something. If you lose, it's 80% or something like that, something along those lines.
Yeah, it gets skewed in an interesting way. But I mean, like, you know, they have a goaltender. Like, you need a goalie that can get hot basically for one weekend, right? And you kind of trust that a guy like Charlie Smart can get hot. But I think for them, I mean, like, maybe the key might be to not play 3 games, right? Like, that might be the whole key to success is will they be able to do that 3 days in a row with no days rest and put a big task on goaltending that has been a little bit inconsistent at times. So I think that'll be the key for them is, can they just shorten that weekend down to 2 games? But again, didn't need it last year either, right? So what do we know?
Yeah, and the Mustangs, I suppose, when they had Liam Hughes a couple of years ago, they had a hot Liam Hughes between the pipes and went all the way and won the cup. I have got you on because of the Adelaide Adrenaline. Obviously had to wait at the start of the season to play their first game. It felt like we were waiting for so long for them to actually get out on the ice. What is the vibe with the Adrenaline at the moment this season? And I felt like sort of a lot like the North Stars, that they've slowly built into their season.
Yeah, I think the vibe has been obviously getting better as the season's gone on. And I think when you win back-to-back weekends and win 4 to 6 games, it kind of does that. I think it was always going to be a pretty tricky start for Adelaide, right? Like, obviously, this team hasn't made the finals in a very long time. And they sort of started the year without those 2 marquee imports, right? Like, I think you can just watch the game and you can see the kind of influence that Koi Priveau and Roman Nekhludov sort of make on this team. And you'll see it this weekend when they're playing the Mustangs, right? Like I'm keen to see actually how they go on a bigger ice surface, like in Melbourne, now that they've been here a few weeks. But they didn't have those key imports. They had a new coach, Jade, who is like, he knows a lot about the game. He's a pretty experienced guy, but he hasn't coached in Australia before. They didn't have a preseason. Like they've had preseason, like, they worked out, they trained, but they didn't have any exhibition games. They didn't play any other teams. And again, it was disjointed. Everybody's starting and they're not starting as well. So it's really hard to build into a season when you don't get a preseason to work on basic systems. You don't have your import goaltender here at the start of the year. You don't have your two key players. So what happens when you don't have all those things organized? You're probably going to lose some games. And I think one of the big differences is not just having those two key players come here, but have the team get more familiar with each other and play some games together. Have Jade Galbraith get more familiar with the players and the systems and the things that he wants to implement. And now you can see that effect. So, I don't know. I think if you could rewrite the Adrenaline season, you kind of would wish you would say, I wish they had 4 preseason games before the games kind of counted, just so Jade could see how the guys work together and how they play together too. So, a bit of a disjointed start, but I mean, that's how it is for everybody. So, but that's kind of how I read the room, at least.
Yeah, and the Australian Ice Hockey League is so compact this season. You sort of don't really get a lot of time to be together. The season is sort of run and done pretty quickly. It's not like a stretched out NHL season or something like that, where you've got plenty of time to get the roster together and make some moves. They're starting to find goals now, which I think is the really, really big thing at this stage of the season. And you obviously mentioned Nekhludov's as well, who scored an absolute beauty of a goal on home ice the last time the Adrenaline played. How big has that been for the Adrenaline? Obviously, they're getting the wins now, but just able to find avenues to goal finally.
I think it's also the balance that they've kind of found, right? In past years, they've kind of had one line that's been scoring all the goals. Like I think, Tristan Metcalf would note that regularly last year in stats that he would send through, that like that Caden Elder line and Josh Adkins scored, like over half of the goals, and Adelaide was more dependent on 2 guys than anybody else. So to answer the first part, Nekhludov makes a massive difference, right? Like what he changes is the power play, I think in particular too, right? Like all of a sudden Adelaide has now gone 4 straight games with scoring a power play goal. Entering last weekend, they had allowed as many shorthanded goals as they'd scored power play goals, and we had played like 12 games in the season. Like that is diabolical. Like that's what kind of you bang your head on the wall as a coach for. So now that Adelaide was scoring 2.5 goals per game, 5-on-5, that was about league average. Like that was kind of fine. But now you have a guy that has more puck position when it's 5-on-5 in the offensive zone. That's not going to allow as many goals the other way. Now you also have a guy that can help run things on the power play. Koi Priveau makes a big difference. That's going to be a bit of a net difference. But on top of that, I think Adelaide's inserted a bit of identity below that top line. Like it's easy to talk about the guy that has 3 points, but that Joey McDougall line has been with Daniel Chen has been kind of used to shut down the other team's top line. And it's hard to do in the AIHL. Like the imports are always going to score, contain them the best you can. They've done a pretty good job of that over the last 3 weeks. And now they're starting to score. Like Joey scored that big goal in the game that they were trying to close out a big weekend to start the weekend versus Central Coast. Daniel Chen is buzzing around. The goals are going to start coming for him. But it's that line with the McGinnis brothers that I think has been a huge difference as well. So Remy and Marcel have made a massive difference. When they were out with injury and sickness for about a 5-6 week stretch, the team loses a lot there. Like it's a third line that really contributes like a second line. They contribute a couple goals a game. And then all of a sudden that bottom line, when they're throwing out there, and they use bottom in a loose term, but Ryan Fohl had 2 straight games with game-winning goals, or 2 straight wins with game-winning goals. And all of a sudden, Dom Trinka is like almost a point-a-game player over the last 3 weeks. So I think now they've found, like Jade has kind of found his groove with the 4 lines they're rolling out. They know what the top line does. They know what that McDougall line does. They know the spark the McGinnis line can bring. And then that kid line that has Trinka and Fohl kind of paired together, making a difference too. So I think from my perspective, that makes a massive, massive difference, is having that identity, which kind of filters down from the top. Like you don't have to worry about the top line. It's set. Like you have Nekladov, Adkins, and Benson. Like, cool, move on from there. So it's been pretty cool to see that part.
I'm here with Eric Balnar, the Adelaide Adrenaline commentator. I haven't got a comment on the Instagram from Claire Collins. I feel like Adelaide will move through quietly, excuse me, and jump up the table. I agree, Claire. You were just talking about identity, and someone that we've mentioned on the first episode of this show with Jeff Coop, and I love the way he plays. And a bit of a spoiler, I'm going to be releasing a feature article on Darcy Flanagan. How much does Darcy Flanagan bring to the Adrenaline? Because when you talk about identity and things like that, I love the way Darcy plays. And I know Darcy rubs people the wrong way and people might think he oversteps the mark, etc., etc. When you look at that identity side of the Adrenaline, what he brings to the team, how big has Darcy been in this season?
Well, I think he brings an edge, which is maybe something that the team has kind of lost in the past. And it's kind of hard, right? Like you play in this rink that is the smallest, probably maybe the smallest it would be the smallest in the league now. And it's a tight environment. There's not a lot of space out there. And now you've got a guy that can run into you, that can chirp at you a little bit, that can play with a bit of an edge, but he's also like a very experienced hockey player, right? Like Darcy wasn't in the league for a little bit, and sometimes it feels like the narrative is like Darcy wasn't in the league just because he wasn't in the league. But this dude is living in Europe. He's playing professional hockey. He's playing in different systems. He's playing on big ice. His game, I think, really suits small ice, but you can see how he brings that edge, even just timing times when he jumps in, joins the rush, goes into the corner, cuts to the middle of the ice, gets pucks directly on net, which is nice to see too. Like he plays with a bit of an aggression and a bit of a bit of gumption, I suppose, for a clean word to use, that makes it difficult to play against. So I kind of like watching. Yeah, it's fun to watch Darcy play. Obviously the penalties come, and that kind of comes with the style of game, but I think you just sort of have to accept that, like, that's just what happens when you play on a line like Darcy does. That's going to happen sometimes, right? So yeah, you hope it doesn't come in a big moment, but you know that he creates things by living on a bit of an edge. But I think, yeah, the edge is something that's lacked there before. So it's a bit of, I don't know, to use like a Brad Tree Living word, like a bit of snarl to the, bit of snarl. What was the word that he used? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll totally agree. Brett Parker's in the comments as well. Just watching the box scores during the weekend, it's been great to see the Adelaide games being close or even unexpected wins from previous year standards. I feel it's exciting for the league overall, plus always have a soft spot for Adelaide. It's a great road trip and people are great. I think it's one of the things, and I've been to the Adelaide rink to watch the Mustangs in the Adrenaline a long time ago now, but it is always one of those things, Eric, where people know how passionate Adelaide Adrenaline fans are, and they just want to see the Adrenaline in the finals because it's been so long. I suppose they've got the new behind the goals. Have sort of tried to extend the capacity as well, where people are behind the goals on that right-hand side of the screen, things like that. How massive would it be for the Adrenaline fans if Adelaide can get into that top six?
Yeah, I mean, it would be huge, right? I think they travel well too, right? Like I'm going to reference back to that, the PHL year when they had the finals, Adelaide Avalanche versus the Ducks in a best of 3 finals there. Like there was a huge portion of the crowd that were from Adelaide that were either supporters, fans, family, and they were loud throughout the game. They brought drums, they were celebrating, they took over the pub post game. There was a couple hundred people there, right? Like it was like a mass migration in terms of hockey standards that went down there. So I think you'd probably see a similar sort of thing if they were to qualify in Melbourne. Like I'm sure people already have like that as a soft flag, being like, if we're in it, we probably need to be there, and we probably need to be there on the Friday for 3 weekends. So I think you'd see a lot of people travel. And I mean, it's kind of cool. Like you go to the rink, and, I've been here now 10 years or 10 and a half years, I guess, but since 2014. But, many of the same faces that were there 11 years ago when they still were on a playoff drought, and they still are now, are there today. And a lot of players that, a lot of people that sponsored a player that long ago are still sponsoring a player today. So I think it would be deeply rewarding to see the guys that they've stuck with, like through thick and thin is like not a word that's used loosely, right? Like it's all thick. It's thick. Yep. Like you support the Adrenaline through thick And it's the hard times that you kind of love the boys and love everybody through, but it's the hard times on the ice. Like, I think that's an important separation as well, right? Like, there's a good vibe around the community. The people still go there, and yeah, they can get frustrated with not lots of wins. Of course, the boys are going to get frustrated too, but it's pretty united community, so they will be absolutely pumped if it happens. But I think the path is, like, the question is did they leave it too late, right? Like, who do you think their battle is with to make the finals? Like, they're in 7th right now. They're 2 points back of the defending champs, so it's easy to say, yeah, they, 1 win and 1 Canberra loss this weekend, and Adelaide's in. But who do you think their battle's actually with to get into the top 6?
I think it's the Brave. And I know that I just pumped up the North Stars, but they've got a massive game today when they face the Melbourne Ice. So all of a sudden, if the Adrenaline can get the result in the win today against the Mustangs, and the Ice continue on their merry way, and they get the job done against the North Stars, all of a sudden that brings the Adrenaline a little bit closer to the North Stars as well. So I think it's the Brave. I think it's the Brave and the North Stars are the two teams that I think they're chasing down. And the Rhinos, like the Brave and the Rhinos, play today, and the Rhinos aren't a pushover, and the Rhinos can score heavy. If the Rhinos get some confidence, and they've played probably 5 good periods out of the last 6 periods, they've played 5 good periods, and they're really finding form. They got the win against the Mustangs, so it's not an easy game for the Brave today too.
I agree, but can I suggest 2 alternate teams that I think that the Adrenaline's battle is with to make the finals?
Yep.
So I think, the Brave is obviously one. They got 16 points, Adelaide to have 14, right? Like, mathematically, that's a battle, but something in me just tells me, like, you see what happened with the Brave last year. You see them signing imports again now. They are just like a team that knows when to peak, when to get good. They've done it before. They've lost some key players from last year. I do understand that. But I just feel like the Brave are going to go on a run. But the key thing for me is that the Adelaide Adrenaline have already played 3 games versus the Canberra Brave, right? They only play them once. So I'm kind of looking at teams that you control your own destiny against. That's why I think that this weekend versus the Melbourne Mustangs is like absolutely crazy big, because Adelaide are 8 points back and they have a game in hand against the Melbourne Mustangs. If you can just split this weekend and win both at home, all of a sudden you now are 2 points back and you have a game in hand. So like, in terms of teams that you can actually chase are the Mustangs, but don't rule out Adelaide actually catching the Brisbane Lightning in a bit of a battle as a path forward, because the Lightning have a pretty tough schedule coming forward. And between now and the end of July, Adelaide and Brisbane play each other 4 times. Like, it's a best of 4 series. There's a 12-point gap there right now, but Brisbane also have to play Newcastle, who I agree with you are hot and they are surging. And that's a road trip to Newcastle as well. So they got to play back-to-back games in their barn, and they're playing Perth this weekend. So is there a reasonable world? Brisbane have surprised a few people, right? But could you see Brisbane going 1-3 in those games versus Perth, a very good team, and versus Newcastle, very good team? Yeah, then all of a sudden you're saying that's 3 points there, and then the other 4 are games versus the Adelaide Adrenaline. And without making any prediction, it's just simple math that says, all right, it's 4 games. We're 12 points back. Brisbane have to play some pretty good teams on the side. If we can win 3 of 4 of these games versus the Brisbane Lightning, all of a sudden we're right on their heels too. So I think the Lightning, even though they're at 26 points and they look for far ahead, they're a team that's sort of in play. It just depends how much of a big believer you are if the Canberra Brave are going to go through. Because if you truly believe that the Brave are the defending champs and they're going to surge their way through, then it feels like, yeah, they're only 2 points ahead, but maybe the battle isn't with them. So you kind of have to look at teams you can jump. That's why the Mustangs and the Lightning, I think, have to be kind of turned attention as like the most important games in the series that you play coming up.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I totally see that as well. And it's because it's something that I mentioned in the blue paint. I mentioned the Mustangs, and I have twice this season about there's something just off with the Mustangs. I haven't been able to put my finger on it. Now they're struggling in the goaltender department. I don't know what's happening with Kimlin, but they're putting in Tom Pappas on the road against teams like Newcastle, etc. And Brody Lindahl, I believe, is not in the country anymore. Might be on holidays or something. So they've lost some firepower there. So the Mustangs could be the team. And you did mention about getting the split. I think most teams in the competition on the road, they aim for that split. If they can get a road sweep, perfect. But if you can get a split, it really will put Adelaide in a good position.
And
we do have
Adelaide only play Brisbane and Melbourne until the end of July. It's 8. Their next 8 games are Melbourne and Brisbane. So that's the season, right? Like, you have to go on a run here. You have to win 6 of 8 games, because you can hunt down teams in the standings if you win against the teams you're chasing. So I think what will reveal itself, if Adelaide are going to be in the finals, it's because they've played well over these next 8 games, and it's because they beat teams that they're chasing, which is just Melbourne and Brisbane.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We have a comment here from Michael Cloth, a fellow commentator, Melbourne Ice commentator. Adelaide didn't get any of the Bears Dogs loan players for the season. In regards to long-term development and team building, is this the right call? It was something I was going to bring up with you, because it feels like, and when I look at the Adelaide Adrenaline not making finals, but I see almost like the production line of young talent that come out of Adelaide. You mentioned Dominic Trinker before. Obviously, Matus has now gone up to Brisbane, but an outstanding goaltender. You got the Chens, the Kudelkas, all this local talent that's coming out of Adelaide. Just a comment on Michael's comment there about, is it the right call and long-term building and development?
I think it's probably the right call for long-term, but short-term it hurts you, because there's a lot of good players that left to other teams. But the deal is, if you were on the Ice Dogs and the Bears, you can go to another team for a year, but if you stay on that team, it costs you a lot more points when you're doing the player transfers than it would otherwise, right? So, if Brian Funes is going to stay in Newcastle, well, it's going to be expensive in terms of point-wise for Brian Funes to stay there. So a lot of these players are going to go back to the Bears and the Ice Dogs, because teams simply can't factor that into their mathematical equation when they're trying to build a team. And Adelaide didn't bring anybody. Now, I think it would have been cool to see one of the players from another team there. It would have provided a much needed boost. There's players there. There's players that are available. But Adelaide, every single player that's on this roster now could theoretically come back next year, and they're still not necessarily in that win now development mode. So maybe you didn't need to take a swing where other teams are like, oh my God, like, we need a top defenseman to, like, this guy's available. Like, let's have him come here, play for the season. So I think short term, obviously other teams all load up with all these players, but long term, I think, it's not necessarily a bad thing to have all these guys play together. Like, those that McGuinness and Best line could be rolled back, I don't know, for years to come, or at least you just get more of an idea of who the Adelaide players are from a coach Jade Galbraith perspective, who you hope is back again next year. And you hope he can enter another season and say, all right, I've had a year. I know this player's style. I know this personality, and I've been around there. So I think long-term, it's probably a good thing, but you won't necessarily see dividends from that. But yeah, like, it would be, I think people were kind of hoping you'd have these star players come across and join the team. But that's the big thing that, maybe that everybody's not necessarily aware of, or all the fans are, that it's not just like, you can't just keep these players. Like, it will be mathematically impossible if you have a couple players from the Bears and Ice Dogs to keep those players on your team, because of the way the points structure is going to be worked.
Yep, absolutely. We did sort of touch on it with the Adrenaline and the Mustangs. They've got a doubleheader weekend. From an on-ice perspective, what do the Adrenaline need to do to get either a split or a sweep against the Mustangs? I mean, obviously, we know that the Mustangs have got Scott Timmins, who has been one of the greatest imports the league has seen. They've now signed Nathan Dunkley, who comes out of the London Knights system as well, has actually played alongside Evan Bouchard, etc., at the London Knights. So obviously got a lot of talent. Ty Wishart on the back end, etc. What do the Adrenaline need to do out on the ice in terms of structure to get the result this weekend?
Limit the odd man rushes. Like, I think you can live with Adelaide losing games. Let's say they lose 9-8, but all those 9 goals that the Melbourne Mustangs scored were because it was off of a forecheck or a cycle, or it was hard-nosed, or their power play was looking good, and you had that systematic, as in playing to a system, and I guess just that effort level, if that was all there and you felt like, wow, they scored 9, but man, they earned those 9 goals, you can kind of live with that. I think Adelaide they've succumbed over the last few years to these 5-minute stretches where things that just look like shambles, and there's odd man rush here, and there's a bad giveaway here, or a poor puck decision on a simple clearance going through the middle of the ice rather than on the outside, or having a lack of structure on the power play and an odd man rush shorthanded going the other way. So I think it's those little effort things that mean to try to limit those odd man rushes. It's a hockey game. Things are going to happen. I'm not saying that, it's a marker, but I think that's the thing you look for is like, is Adelaide giving up odd man rushes or those little breaks in waves? Because those have been absolute backbreakers for the team. And I think they played so well in that, like that Canberra game at the AIS was just like, where did this come from? Like they had puck possession, they were tilting the ice in one direction at time. And then when Canberra were piling it on, it felt more like everything was from the outside. Canberra had a lot of puck possession. They had a couple chances in tight, but they weren't like, oh my goodness, now the guy's breaking out on a big ice on the left side. So yeah, now they're going to a big ice surface that they haven't played a game in a week. Like how sharp are they in terms of playing a system that can limit those odd man rushes? So that's what I'm looking for today. Like, are they sloppy in terms of giving up opportunities? They're going to have to be tight there. And when they have the power play opportunity, they're going to have to work they're going to have to work harder than the team that's shorthanded to make sure that they're not giving up anything on that end too, because it has been a problem.
Yeah, and the Mustangs, they find a way, even shorthanded, they look for that outlet pass and look for that stretch pass through the neutral zone. So it's definitely something you've got to keep an eye on, 100%. I am with Eric Balnar, the Adelaide Adrenaline commentator. Drop a comment in the chat if you're here, if you want to ask Eric a question. Just one more before I let you go. I've probably kept you way longer, as I said to Chris last week, way longer than I thought. I've mentioned off the top, I've got a Melbourne Aces hat on here. And I know that you're heavily involved in baseball here in Australia. It's a sport I love, and it's a sport that, a long time ago for Hewitt Sports Network, I actually covered the ABL for a little bit as a journalist. I know that baseball the ABL side of things has had its struggles recently. There's been a lot of news. I just look at the ABL and I look at the AI. Do you see a big correlation between the two leagues and sports here and where they stand? And how do you think that the two leagues or the two sports could actually work closely together to try and expand their reach and their supporter base and all that sort of stuff?
I definitely see similarities in terms of standing and facility, in terms of where it exists in the Australian sporting system, right? Like there is a lot of parallels, and you're right. There probably is opportunity to work well together because it is opposite season, and maybe that's packaging online content or streaming content or whatever that looks like. I think the big difference between the two leagues is the quality. And I don't mean that in terms of like the entertainment value and going there. I mean the actual player that goes to this league, right? Like there were the number 1 overall pick in the Major League Baseball, played in the Australian Baseball League, and he's Australian and developed from the Australian system, right? Like, are we ever going to have an Australian be the consensus number 1 pick in the NHL? There have been 75 players since the league came back in 2010 that have moved on to Major League Baseball since playing in the ABL in the last 15 years. We're not going to ever have those numbers in the AIHL, well, at least in the immediate future, of us being able to say, oh yeah, in 15 years from now, are we going to be saying there have been 75 players who played in the AIHL who then advanced to the NHL? Like, it's just not, like that's where the big difference of the quality is, right? Like the Tokyo Giants, the Philadelphia Phillies, the Oryx Buffaloes, like these huge brands around the world send players here. So that's the big difference in terms of the overseas investment, right? Like that is the big one. Like when you're the Tokyo Giants and you're sending 3 players to play in the ABL, you're not only paying the players to be there, but you're paying staff to go over, you're paying for a routine, and you're getting them quality game time in that system. All of a sudden it's $100,000 investment from, the Tokyo Giants to send players and develop in that league. So I think that's the big difference between the two, is while maybe the standing and the tier in the sport is the same, and we could probably do a better job of trying to scrap your way up there. Internationally, it's not viewed that at all. Like Australia is a top 10 country in the world when it comes to playing baseball and beats the likes of Korea at World Baseball Classic. So I think that's the big difference. With all due respect to everybody that plays in the AIHL, it's their 9 to 5. Like it's not their 9 to 5. Sorry. Like they have full-time jobs, families, and that's what makes this league special, man. Like that's so cool that everybody's like, and that's why I love it as well. But the players that are in the ABL has now got to a point where they are baseball players 9 to 5. That's what they do. So that's a big difference in terms of how the athletes go about it. Because imagine the quality of hockey we'd have if we said to the Adelaide Adrenaline, because that's why I'm on here. If we said, all right, you're getting paid to play the game. You're getting paid to do it in the off season. Quit your jobs. You do not have to be a lawyer. You do not have to be a Sparky. You do not have to be a student. You will only focus on getting better in the offseason and playing hockey. And in the AIHL season, you will be practicing on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, sometimes twice a week. And then you get to go and play games, and you don't have to worry about the rest and recovery with work. I think the quality would be a massive difference. It's not going to happen, though. So that's the big difference, is it's amateur versus professional.
Yeah, totally agree. We suppose we need a billionaire to come in and take over the Australian Ice Hockey League. And like we've seen with the PWHL, which is awesome and amazing, maybe we need that here.
Well, you want to make the teams a bit more economically viable in the ABL. That's the problem. It's amateur versus professional, right? Like you're not paying a whole. Imagine if you went to every AIHL owner and said, all right, on top of the cost that you have already to operate the Melbourne Mustangs, you now need to pay, like, what was the salary cap in the ABL last year? $130,000 or whatever it was, right? Like 150,000, 200,000. I actually don't know the number, but I'm just throwing out random numbers. Call it 150 because it's just a nice random number. If you said, hey, Melbourne Mustangs, now you have to stick to $150,000 salary cap and you have to pay those players that, like, all of a sudden that's quite literally $150,000 more on the operating budget than what exists right now. So, I'm sure the AIHL owners would have a tough time stomaching that. So it's tough, right? Like these are professional players playing in a league, in a landscape where baseball is just not considered a top tier sport, even though it is around the world.
Yeah. And when you're talking about the thing that the fact that the AI isn't like that is why you love it. I totally agree, because it's one thing that, and I know it's totally different, but I used to watch a lot of English Premier League soccer, but now I don't watch it at all. And it's that multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar industry and players getting played exuberant amounts, which is why I don't love it anymore. And it's why I love the leagues like the AI.
That I explained that to my to a lot of my friends as well. And like one of my best buddies, he actually works pretty high up in the NHL media department, and he follows this league closely. And one of the big reasons is as well, and we talk about it all the time, is that the Australian Ice Hockey League has soul, right? Like it's not about the money. It's not about any corporate partnership. It's about soul. It's about playing who you are because you love the game. You love showing up to the rink with your brothers and your mates and your community. And there's a lot of pride. Like, yeah, maybe these players aren't getting paid, but people are still paying to see them play. And you have to wear that as a badge of honor in terms of how you play, because people are investing their money and time to watch you do something. But the reason you're playing is because you genuinely love it and you have a reason. So when you win, like those reactions, anytime anyone lifts the Goodall Cup, look, I don't know, I've never been close to it, but I've watched enough of them, but they like, you can see how much it means to community, and you can see how much it means to the player, because there's no other factors for the most part. I mean, there's a couple, everybody knows there's a couple stories mixed here and there, but overwhelmingly it's because these players play with soul, which is what makes it a beautiful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And they should enjoy it. It's one of the oldest ice hockey trophies in the world. So they should have that reaction. Corey Katina is in the chat from Minnesota. Evening, guys. Evening, Corey. And Brett Parker, who's at work at the moment, the dream right maybe one day, talking about the billionaire taking over the AI and bringing it up the sporting ladder here in Australia. I've kept you a lot longer than I thought I would, Eric. One thing I want to finish on, the NHL draft is going at the moment. I don't know who your team is, actually. I'm a Flames fan, so I'm hoping they make a good selection. But what are you expecting out of the draft, which is on right now?
Well, what I am keeping an eye on is for will an a player, I just talked about a player from Australia will never be drafted high. There is a player who was born in Adelaide and spent the first few years of his life in Adelaide before moving to Sweden, who could be drafted in the first round. His name is Jacob Wozniak. He's been playing in Sweden, but he's I think he was the number 8 ranked prospect, number 9 ranked prospect from in the international board. So that would put him in the first round. And he was born in Adelaide. I think he lived in Adelaide for like 2 or 3 years, but his dad is South Australian. And then moved to Adelaide. So, I mean, the South Australian blood is there. It's just a fact. He was born in Adelaide to South Australian pedigree. Unfortunately, it's not one that we can claim like Nathan Walker, who grows up in Blacktown, still comes back to Australia. Like, he's very much an Australian product, but still kind of cool that, he is from Adelaide. He mentioned in interviews that he grew up playing cricket, and he goes back in summers and plays on the tennis courts near his grandparents' house and all that stuff. So I'm watching that. I'm a diehard Leafs fan, so the first round of the draft is like irrelevant for me. Like, it may as well not even exist. Like, it's just a day that goes by. But I'm hoping to see a couple big deals. I would love to see a big trade somewhere in there from some team. That's what I always love watching, is those draft day deals. So yeah, we'll see. How about you? Who's your team?
I'm a Flames fan. So we're lacking in centers. So if we can find it, our first pick is pick 18, unless they move up in the draft order. We have got Rasmus Anderson, who's out on the table for a trade. So maybe that's something that happens. But as long as we can pick up centers and get some center depth, then I think there might be a couple of decent centers at pick 18 that I've seen in the pre-mock drafts.
Yeah. The Flames are in an interesting danger of being in no man's land, right? So hopefully they can shake something up and move themselves out of that kind of middle one that might be pushing for a playoff spot, might just miss and kind of stuck in never bad enough to be bad, but never good enough to be good.
Brett's just jumped in, saw John Tavares re-signed. So that's must be breaking news, I guess, this morning. I did see Sam Bennett re-signed for 8 years at Florida, and looks like Tavares is re-signed at the Leafs.
4-year extension, I heard, with where is it? Yeah, there he goes. How's this for a salary cap hit? What do you think that salary, without you knowing, this is clear, what do you think his salary cap hit was?
I was expecting something probably 6.5, 7.
So if the Leafs got him for 4 years with an annual salary cap hit of $4.39 million.
Wow.
That plays.
That's a hometown discount.
That's a hometown discount, and that's a hometown discount that happened 7 years too late. But no, that's a good one, right? Like, that age is good. You were worried that was going to become a Stamkos situation, but 4.39 is very palatable, right? Like, even if he's the last 2 years of the contract aren't quite there, you can probably live with that, and you can probably trade him on a salary retention deal as well for an asset for a guy that. Players you saw that with Brad Marchand, right? Like, I think players are going to be, or elite players are going to be better longer, because we are now at a generation that 20 years ago is really when all this sports technology and how you attack a game with your body really took into effect. So right now we are experiencing the first generation of players that really can play at an elite level for longer. And I think you're going to see more and more top end players be able to do things like Brad Marchand did just in the playoffs, because they've only known how to do this, and they've been treating their body differently, not better, because the science just wasn't there before, but they've been treating their body better, which will allow elite players to play longer. So that's interesting. 4.39 is an outrageous deal. Holy cow.
Absolutely. Totally agree. What's the rest of the day look for you today, Eric?
Well, I'm actually going away to a cabin on a bit of a weekend winter getaway with my partner, but it's all built around the key things. I actually have a rare weekend off. I was just covering a bunch of baseball tournaments for stories that nobody needs to hear, but I have a lot of time off coming up in the next little bit. So the plan is today is going to watch that Adrenaline Mustangs game, and then I'll head on up to a cabin, and tomorrow I'll do absolutely nothing, but I'll pop on the Adrenaline and Mustangs game, and hopefully you can see Adelaide make a bit of a dent and just set up a good game next weekend versus Brisbane. Like, I would just love, selfishly, I would love to see Perth knock Brisbane off a couple of times, Adelaide get a minimum split in Perth, and then it just sets up a storyline for July that says, holy cow, Adelaide are in the thick of a race, because there is a scenario that Canberra win this weekend and Perth and Brisbane split and Adelaide lose both games. And you're kind of like, well, Adelaide are in some trouble again. So hopefully they didn't leave it too late.
And we love storylines. That's what makes sport amazing. All the storylines that come out of it. Eric Balnar, I've kept you on for a lot longer than I initially thought I would. But thank you for jumping on the Morning Hockey Shot. Enjoy your little trip away. Hopefully the Adrenaline can grab a couple of wins or split the weekend this weekend, and we can really see the Adrenaline push that top 6 for the rest of the season. But Eric, thanks for jumping on the Morning Hockey Shot.
Man, it was great to be here. Anytime you need, I look forward to talking hockey more.
Thanks, mate. There he goes, Eric Balnar, the Adelaide Adrenaline commentator, giving an insight into the Adelaide Adrenaline season so far, and a little bit of baseball talk as well, with Eric doing a lot of work in the Australian baseball field with the ABL and Baseball Australia. Does a mountain of work and really solid work, Eric, in the baseball field. But hopefully you enjoyed Eric coming on, giving a bit of an insight into the Adrenaline season. I kept him for a lot longer than I initially planned for. I did plan for these segments with the guests not to go too long, and I think I've kept him for about 40 minutes. So I thank Eric for jumping on. I have got the menu here. I've got a little bit more to get through. Hopefully we can get through it before I sign off out of here. I don't want to spend all morning in your eyeballs and ears. I did mention off the top, just talking about the Melbourne Ice, how they have split themselves at the top of the standings now, and they had a big test last weekend against the Brisbane Lightning up at Boondall Ice Arena, and they did get the job done. The first on the Saturday, it was an overtime win, and then on the Sunday, they really put the foot down and got the job done against the Brisbane Lightning in a really strong performance. But their big dogs fired, and I think that's one of the things that's really stood out for me with the Ice. And when they won 12-5 on the Sunday against the Lightning, when you look at the top players and the point scorers for that weekend for the Melbourne Ice, and it's crazy when I look at this, because I think about the Melbourne Ice power play, the number one power play, and when you've got players like your number one power play is David Booth, Joachim Erdogan, Colton Schindel, Jamie Burke, Matt Caruana. This is the power play units that you're putting out at number one. I'm not sure there's a team in the competition that can actually go with the Melbourne Ice when you're looking at that strong of a PP1. It's one of the most skilled power plays that I've seen in my time across the Australian Ice Hockey League, and they came up big for the Melbourne Ice last weekend. Booth had 10 points, Erdogan 9, Schindel 7, Burke 6, Bronte and Caruana had 5 points each, and they really put the foot down last weekend against the Brisbane Lightning. So I just wanted to highlight that as well. And I did have the David Booth goal here, the overtime winner from the Saturday, and I just wanted to highlight it because it's those little details, I think, when you get to the pointy end of the season in the finals, and if you're going on to win a Goodall Cup, it's this attention to detail and staying focused throughout the either 60 minutes or the overtime period that is really going to get you over the line when it comes to the finals and the Goodall Cup final and lifting the cup. Hopefully I can get this up on the screen here. The David Booth goal from the weekend. It was just at the back post, and it was Jamie Burke just holding his line, holding the puck and keeping it for the extra little
so
couple
Haas
of seconds.
Sends it back in the middle, tries to find Campbell, but Karuna picks it up. He has Booth to his left, so now here comes Booth. David Booth. They're trying to overlap.
And you see here, David Booth has the puck now as I pause
Burke
it.
and Booth.
And Booth will just drop it off to Jamie Burke, and Booth will sort of go behind the net with Sasha Rapchuk. And if you look closely at the far post, you'll see David Booth just keeping an eye on Burke, and Rapchuk just thinking that Booth's going to keep continuing that line and skate over to the far side. And then David Booth just cuts back in, and a beautiful pass from Burke.
Wrister, sends one back in front goal.
And David Booth puts it in.
David Booth finds it to the back post. This
and that's
game
the winner,
is over.
the overtime winner on the Saturday. And if I look at that, something like that from David Booth, I think to myself, it's those little details that's going to win you the Good All Cup. Just staying focused and not losing your focus and keeping it throughout the 60 minutes or the overtime period. So I just wanted to highlight that with David Booth. If we have a quick look at the standings now, the Melbourne Ice obviously sitting on top, 43 points. The Lightning in second and the Thunder in third, both on 26 points. The Mustangs in fourth on 22. The North Stars in fifth on 21. They're chasing down Lightning, Thunder, and Mustangs. The Brave in sixth on 16 points. The Adrenaline seventh on 14. We just spoke about it with Eric Balnar. And the Rhinos sitting at the bottom on 12. But they have a big weekend as well coming up. As we have a look at the schedule for the weekend. So today we have the Canberra Brave travelling to the Central Coast to face the Rhinos. The Melbourne Ice, they'll face off against the Newcastle North Stars. The Adelaide Adrenaline will face the Mustangs, and the Brisbane Lightning will travel over to WA and face the Perth Thunder over in Perth. So we've got every single team this weekend, a stacked weekend in the Australian Ice Hockey League. All teams playing, and on the Sunday, the Brave will face the North Stars. The Ice will face the Rhinos in the swap of the schedule there. The Adrenaline obviously will back it up against the Mustangs, and so too will the Lightning against the Perth Thunder. So we have a stacked weekend in the Australian Ice Hockey League with all teams playing, which is awesome. It's great to see when you have a weekend that all the teams are playing, and it is an interesting one out of Melbourne as well, because it's usually a lot of the time it's a split weekend where Adelaide will travel down and they'll face the Ice and the Mustangs across the weekend. But this weekend, the Adelaide Adrenaline, they will face off against the Melbourne Mustangs in a double-header weekend at O'Brien Icehouse. I'm pretty sure that's it. That's all I wanted to get through today. Quickly wrap it up here. Just gone under 1 hour. If you've tuned in today, thank you. I thank Eric for jumping on as well. I do hope that you're enjoying this sort of content. I see a comment here from Corey Katina just on the John Tavares, sorry. He gave them a great deal, but also deferred 2 years of it, which makes it interesting as well, Corey. But I still think it's a great deal for the Leafs. It's definitely something that I didn't think would be in that price range. So Tavares is re-signed with the Toronto Maple Leafs. If you enjoy this content, please let me know. Drop a comment in the chat. Hit like and subscribe and do all that sort of stuff and follow. It's live across Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram every single weekend, 9 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on a Saturday. But that'll do it for me today. Thanks, Eric, for jumping on. I will have a big guest next week on the show to get a real insight into the Canberra Brave and AIS Arena. So I'm looking forward to bringing that to you next weekend. If you're getting out to a game today, enjoy it, cheer loud, chuck up some photos on your stories, and you can tag me at Andrew K. MacDougall on Instagram. I will reshare it if you've got a story. I will reshare it to mine as well. You can check my stuff out at www.andrewkmacdougall.com.au. Hit subscribe, hit like, follow, all that sort of stuff. It helps the algorithm. It will help my platform grow and this show grow as well to reach more people. Steve Moyler, good work again, Doogie. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate your support every single week. I'm just trying to get a bit of a different insight into the league and its clubs. So each week I'll have a different person from a different club focusing on their club. And today it was the Adelaide Adrenaline with Eric Balnar. So getting a bit of a different insight from the main players in the game and what they see and how they cover it, because they're there, feet on the ground every single weekend. So that'll do it today for the morning hockey shot. Get out to a rink, support your team, jump onto aihl.tv if you haven't and watch the stream. If you're playing today, enjoy it. Hope you get a win. I'm playing at 4 p.m. today, so I'm looking forward to it. But that'll do it. The morning hockey shot, June 28th. I'll see you back here next Saturday at 9 a.m. Until then, bye.
Step 1, wake up early, gonna rise with the sun. Step 2, get some good, some food in you. Step 3, think real hard about what you wanna be. Step 4, everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day.